Imagine a high-stakes global negotiation, right? But instead of a boardroom, the players are entire nations. And the
Yeah.
chips, global dominance, economic future, it's everything.
The stakes really couldn't be higher.
And what we're seeing now feels like a radical reshuffling of that deck. It's fundamentally altering the world's economic landscape.
It really is.
We're going to explore these arguments, these compelling signs that suggest a huge shift in global economic power, challenging, those long-held assumptions about where the world's heading.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating, I think, is just how quickly this is all evolving. Systems that seemed, well, totally entrenched.
Right. Set in stone, almost.
Exactly. International finance, geopolitics.
Yeah.
They're facing unprecedented pressure. Things are really changing.
Understanding these dynamics is just crucial, isn't it, for anyone watching the world stage right now?
Absolutely essential.
And look, if you find this exploration as captivating as we do, please make sure to subscribe to the Geopolitics Gazette. We'll bring you more insights into the forces shaping our world.
Definitely worth doing.
Okay, so let's unpack this central idea that's really gaining traction. For decades, the U.S. operated on this assumption, right, that its economic leverage, specifically the huge size of its market,
The market access carrot or stick.
yeah, could basically dictate global behavior. Access was supposedly so vital, nations would just fall in line. But does that assumption still hold?
Well, that's the big question.
Can the U.S., being a significant debtor, a deficit country, can it really call the shots that people thought?
My analysis points to a very different picture now.
It seems attempts at, say, aggressive tariffs have sometimes backfired, leading to markets seizing up, forcing a pullback.
That's a critical observation. There's a prominent perspective suggesting that viewing the U.S. market as the absolute center, granting this immense leverage. Well, it might just be an anachronistic view now.
Outdated thinking.
Pretty much. Now, sure, some countries like Mexico, Canada, they're deeply reliant. You see around 70% of their exports go into the U.S. But globally, the U.S. market accounts for only about, 12–13% of worldwide imports?
Only 12–13%.
For a lot of nations, especially those diversifying trade. That's just not enough leverage to force a fundamental change in foreign policy or economic direction.
So the idea that the U.S. could just block China's exports, for instance, and China would then flood Europe, forcing Europe's hand, that doesn't really hold water.
It doesn't seem to align with the trade patterns we're seeing. China has already quite effectively diversified Asia, Africa, Latin America.
Right.
So relying on market access as your main tool, it feels more like a bluff now, maybe, than a really strong hand.
That's a powerful way to put it. And this brings us to that other critical piece, the exorbitant privilege of the U.S. dollar.
Ah, yes.
For so long, it meant the U.S. could borrow, spend internationally with fewer constraints because its currency was the currency.
The global reserve standard.
But the analysis we're looking at suggests this privilege might be, well, hanging by a thread. Why is that? What are the factors?
Okay, based on my examination, there are really 5 key reasons analysts see it as increasingly precarious. First, just the undeniable fact. The U.S. is shrinking economic weight.
Relatively speaking.
Relatively, yeah. Especially measured in purchasing power parity. You've got the rapid rise of China, India.
Shifting the balance.
Exactly. That naturally diminishes the dollar's centrality. Second, there's a perceived, let's call it a total failure of fiscal responsibility within the U.S. itself.
The debt deficits.
Huge deficits, growing national debt. According to these analyses, that erodes international confidence. Long-term stability questions.
Okay, so economic weight, fiscal issues. What's third?
Third, and this one's huge politically, is what many see as the extensive weaponization of the dollar.
Using it as a foreign policy tool.
Pervasively. Through sanctions, freezing, or seizing foreign exchange reserves. We've seen it with Russia, Venezuela, Iran, Afghanistan.
Right.
That sends a message, a really stark message. Holding reserves in dollars carries political risk. It's seen as a breach of trust by many, a bad act.
And the SWIFT system threats?
That too. Threatening to cut banks off SWIFT if they don't comply with sanctions. It causes serious diplomatic friction. It's actively pushing countries to find alternatives, a powerful incentive for de-dollarization.
So it's economics, but it's also politics and trust. And you mentioned technology earlier.
Absolutely, that's the fourth factor. The SWIFT system, foundational, yes, but it looks kind of primitive, slow in this digital age.
Compared to what's emerging.
Compared to China's proactive development of its central bank digital currency, the ECNY, exploring new digital payment rails, the U.S. seems, well, slower on its own CBDC or modernizing payments.
Ceding ground, potentially.
But that's the view. It accelerates the shift away from traditional dollar-based systems towards faster, maybe more secure digital options.
And the fifth point.
Internal resistance within the U.S. The influence of Wall Street, for example, is seen by some as hindering seamless integration of cloud capital digital finance systems. It creates fragmentation.
Unlike in China,
where you see broader implementation of national interoperability, digital finance. So while Washington navigates crypto cautiously, China's pushing ahead with state-backed digital currency. It nudges the system away from its old moorings.
that's a really thorough breakdown.
Yeah.
So if the U.S. hand is potentially weakening, what about China's position? How does the analysis see Beijing's economic standing?
Well, from the economic viewpoint, the research indicates China checks pretty much all boxes for a strong, innovating economy set for future growth.
Like what?
Consistently high saving rates, a really robust, improving education system, especially in STEM, rapid, widespread innovation, and a clear government-backed path with huge investment in key future industries.
Such as?
Advanced tech. China's established itself as the low-cost producer of high-quality advanced tech. Think zero-carbon energy renewables, cutting-edge fourth-gen nuclear,
Right.
fast rail, tens of thousands of kilometers. A truly national network. Compare that to the U.S.
Virtually none.
And they're mastering 5.5G already, 10 times faster than 5G. Game-changing connectivity.
So in many areas, it sounds like they're actually leading. What about EVs, the electric vehicle market?
Oh, undeniably the world leader there. Sales, production, the last decade saw this intense, almost Darwinian competition internally. Hundreds of EV companies.
Driving innovation.
Exactly. Rapid innovation, efficiency, quality gains. Now, over 40% of new car sales in China are EVs. It's a massive transformation.
And this overcapacity idea we hear about.
Yeah, the Western criticism. From the perspective of this research, that's actually a sign of incredible success. Immense capacity in the very industries, green tech, digital, that are the future.
So not a weakness, but a strength.
A foundational strength, positioning them as a key global supplier for the tech the world needs for the next few decades.
That's compelling. Hearing a weakness reframed as a strength, which leads to that other narrative, the Western one saying China's model isn't working, it stifles the private sector. How does the analysis address that?
It offers a very different take, largely frames that criticism as Western rhetoric, not economic reality. Pointing to the fierce competition we just talked about, EVs, tech as proof that innovation is thriving. Yes, they've had real estate adjustments, sure, but they still maintain around 5% growth. That's seen less as failure, more as a strategic shift. From quantity to quality, sustainability, high-tech.
A deliberate pivot.
Exactly. And a key distinction made is that China isn't like Japan in the 80s. It's not seen as caving to external pressure.
Right, the Plaza Accord context.
Yeah, many argue Japan's slowdown was partly engineered by the U.S. China's seen as having many more alternative, broader global partnerships. It's less vulnerable to unilateral pressure.
A really nuanced view. And these big economic shifts, they inevitably create geopolitical friction, don't they? Fault lines.
Absolutely.
Before we get into those risks, just a quick reminder. If you're finding this exploration insightful, please do subscribe to the Geopolitics Gazette. Your support helps us bring these analyses to you.
Okay, so shifting to geopolitics. One analytical view suggests U.S. policy towards China, especially this past decade, follows a pretty clear blueprint.
A playbook.
A playbook outlined years ago. Closing markets, stopping tech exports, building alliances to exclude China, boosting military presence in the South China Sea.
We've seen those elements.
Right, and it's often accompanied, this analysis notes, by an info war, concerted efforts to cast doubt on China's intentions, its capabilities. The concerning aspects highlighted is, if these actions contribute to a Chinese economic slowdown, that slowdown is then presented as proof the Chinese system failed. It's framed as a kind of baiting, not serious analysis.
That's a strong assessment. And it brings us to, well, probably the most volatile point, Taiwan. What's the consensus there?
The assessment on Taiwan is, frankly, stark. Extremely high stakes. Everything the U.S. does regarding Taiwan is described in some analyses as playing with conflagration, with disaster.
Strong words.
Very. The idea of a war over Taiwan, consistently called mind-boggling by experts. War games, simulations. They repeatedly show the U.S. likely being defeated conventionally, thousands of miles from home.
And the escalation risk.
Huge. Some analyses warn such a conflict could rapidly escalate, potentially leading to global annihilation. That's presented not as hyperbole, but as a logical risk given modern capabilities and interconnectedness.
Nuclear power is involved.
Exactly. There's also a comparison drawn to Ukraine. The worry that U.S. actions might inadvertently encourage Taiwanese politicians towards maybe a reckless independence declaration,
Believing they have full U.S. backing.
potentially miscalculating and triggering a devastating conflict.
It really underscores the need for a different kind of statecraft, given those risks. How does China's own history, its approach to power, factor in?
The analysis highlights two really significant historical points. First, China hasn't been in a major war for over 40 years.
That is extraordinary compared to others.
It really is. Second, there's the concept of a Confucian peace. Historical periods of regional stability centered on China, where, despite being dominant in East Asia, it largely didn't invade neighbors like Japan or Korea,
Suggesting a different model.
suggesting a potentially different, maybe more cautious, less expansionist approach to statecraft compared to, say, Western imperial histories. Even as a rising power, the historical pattern leans towards stability, economic integration over conflict.
Which implies a fundamental difference in worldview, maybe, how they see global order.
That's certainly implied.
And this brings us back, doesn't it, full circle to finance, to the internationalization of the renminbi.
Yes, and the research strongly suggests China should continue those efforts. Relying so heavily on the U.S. dollar, it's just seen as too risky now, too vulnerable to unilateral U.S. intervention.
The Russia example looms large.
Hugely. The freezing of Russia's $300 billion in reserves. It's a stark reminder, according to these views, that some in Washington, London, Brussels are perceived as willing to just seize assets.
Creates massive distrust.
Immense distrust, and powerfully incentivizes moving away from dollar holdings. It makes a multi-currency world, with a prominent renminbi, seem not just inevitable, but strategically necessary.
For stability, for sovereignty.
Exactly, and China's already actively financing global infrastructure, fostering renminbi finance, especially across Southeast Asia, laying that groundwork.
Wow. What a truly thought-provoking exploration of this rapidly changing world. It's just so clear the dynamics, power, economics, finance are profoundly shifting.
Yeah.
With huge implications for all of us.
Absolutely. And the central question these analyses leave us with is, are we moving towards a genuinely multipolar economic and financial system?
Yeah.
Or do the current tensions risk a really perilous escalation, maybe rooted in resistance to that very shift? What stands out to you as the biggest takeaway here?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? We sincerely hope this discussion has offered you a fresh, maybe deeper perspective on these critical global issues. If you appreciate this kind of exploration, please do subscribe to the Geopolitics Gazette, and we genuinely love to hear your point of view. Share your thoughts, your insights in the comment section. Until next time, keep thinking critically about the world around you.